My message to every business in the world is very simple. Come make your product in America, and we will give you among the lowest taxes of any nation on earth. We're bringing them down very substantially, even from the original Trump tax cuts. But if you don't make your product in America, which is your prerogative, then very simply you will have to pay a tariff, differing amounts, but a tariff which will direct hundreds of billions of dollars and even trillions of dollars into our treasury to strengthen our economy and pay down debt.
DW correspondent Ben Fazulin is in Davos for us. I asked him how business leaders there reacted to Trump's speech.
Well, they expected this speech. They've been preparing for it for a long time. They experienced a lot of what they're going to be experiencing now in the first Trump term, but this time it will be more intense. He's been planning as well, and he has come to the table quite prepared, as you knew and as you saw on day one of his presidency during his inauguration and all of those declarations that were made. But as I said, the business elite here is ready to adjust. We saw the business CEOs who were talking to Mr. Trump when he gave his live address, and they were really kowtowing to him. They're prepared to change their business models. They're prepared to shift production. But whether or not Trump's policies bringing about prosperity is another question.
This is also your 10th Davos, Ben. How would you describe it?
I would describe it as very strange. I mean, first of all, it's usually the other way around. The business leaders are the ones setting the terms here, and the political leaders come here on their knees asking for money and investment. But here we have President Trump setting the terms this time round. So the business elites are doing a lot behind the scenes, a lot of damage control, I guess you could say, trying to work out how they can get together their funds, cooperate on different levels to perhaps counter these tariffs. I mean, sure, states like Canada, Mexico, and the EU have all promised counter tariffs. That's something that's going to hurt Trump as well. And as I mentioned, some of these policies of his trying to lower taxes, for example, is something that could hit debt, that could hit inflation, rising import prices for the US consumer. It could hurt his voting base. Also, rising costs for local manufacturers when tariffs are put on raw materials, for example, which have to be imported. That will also see prices rise. So across the board, you could see the global economy hurt more than what Trump expects, and that could backfire for the US economy.
And in a major departure from the Western consensus on the issue, Trump said he is prepared to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin to secure an end to the war.
I think very important. I really would like to be able to meet with President Putin soon and get that war ended. And that's not from the standpoint of economy or anything else. It's from the standpoint of millions of lives are being wasted. Beautiful young people are being shot in the battlefield. You know, the bullet, very flat land, as I said, and the bullet goes, there's no hiding. And a bullet, the only thing going to stop the bullet is a human body. And you have to see, I've seen pictures of what's taken place. It's a carnage, and we really have to stop that war. That war is horrible. And I'm not talking economy. I'm not talking economics. I'm not talking about natural resource. I'm just talking about there's so many young people being killed in this war.
For more on this, let's speak to DW reporter Melissa Chan. Melissa, good morning. It's probably, I think, the third time this week that President Trump has said he's ready to meet President Putin. Isn't that a major departure from a general aversion most Western leaders have had from meeting Putin?
It is definitely a departure from the norm, but not from Donald Trump's norm. Because if you recall, in his first administration, he seemed willing to meet with any leader that he thought he could cut a deal with. Recall Kim Jong-un of North Korea and that meeting. His Davos comments on Russia were really interesting. Earlier, you alluded to the OPEC countries. He expressed disappointment in the Saudis for not helping bring down the cost of energy in order to hurt Russia. He also mentioned Beijing's ability to put pressure on Moscow. And he also acknowledged that Zelensky is willing to negotiate and that it really is up to Putin. There was a question about whether in 1 year Ukraine and Russia would still be at war. And he said that's really up to Putin. So gone is that victim blaming of Ukraine that we've seen in the past, and that's already having an impact in the EU. Hungary has been the holdup for a new round of sanctions. Orban, as late as Tuesday, was digging in his heels. By Wednesday, when he saw the Truth Social posts from Trump and saw where he was leaning towards, it looks like Hungary is going to be on board for the next round of sanctions.
That's just Hungary, but what about Europe as a whole? How should Europe read Trump's comments?
Well, on that NATO mention of increasing things from not just 2% of GDP defense spending, but to 5%, this would actually also mean that the United States would have to increase its defense spending. It's at around 3.5% in the United States. So, you know, people sympathetic to Trump would interpret it as, hey, this guy is actually leaning into NATO. He's thinking of ways of buttressing NATO, making it stronger. This is not someone who is, going to pull out of NATO, and strengthening NATO only sends the message of warning to Russia.
And what else stood out for you in this speech?
Oh, well, you got to mention China. Right. And there was a question about how, like, from one of the questioners about you called President Xi Jinping, and Trump was like, no. Xi Jinping called me in a power move. And then he went on to talk about his good relationship with Xi. We've heard this all before, but he was very quick to mention that China was the cause of COVID-19 and that it came from Wuhan. Once again, exhibiting that Trump is willing to talk to leaders. It doesn't mean that he won't, give them a free pass. This is going to be a tough on China administration, at least for now.
All right. It wasn't just China that he was talking about in the speech, but there's also something about his perspectives on how he thinks the world should do business with the United States. Let's just listen in to what he said, and then we'll continue the conversation.
My message to every business in the world is very simple. Come make your product in America, and we will give you among the lowest taxes of any nation on earth. We're bringing them down very substantially, even from the original Trump tax cuts. But if you don't make your product in America, which is your prerogative, then very simply you will have to pay a tariff, differing amounts, but a tariff which will direct hundreds of billions of dollars and even trillions of dollars into our treasury to strengthen our economy and pay down debt.
So, Melissa, Donald Trump loves the word tariffs. He's used them on more than one occasion, even during the campaign trail. But do tariffs necessarily work in America's favor?
And that's a really great question. And just going back to the China example, although he has also, of course, threatened tariffs against the EU, it is American consumers that have to eat up the cost of those tariffs that get passed down. And not just American consumers when they go to the supermarket or their Walmart, but also American businesses that rely on the supply chains that China provides so much materials on. And so there's an argument to be made. A lot of economists have said that any tariffs, a tariff war would hurt the United States a lot more than it would hurt China. But Trump is saying that he's going to go ahead and do it on February 1st. When it comes to China, we'll see.
We'll leave it there for the moment. Melissa Chan, thanks very much for coming into the studio.